Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for coming to the UK BIM Alliance Forum. Thank you, everybody, for coming on virtually at this point in time. This was going to be an in-person meeting up in Newcastle, but present situation has made things rather difficult for that. So thank you ever so much for taking the time. We've got a lot of good, really interesting content for you today. The first thing I just want to do is just a few kind of guidelines for using the GoToWebinar. If we move on to the next slide. Just get the technical issues out of the way first.
Can you see the next slide?
No. Yes, no.
Yes or no? Because
I can't see it. No, I thought I was seeing mine.
Sam, we get notes as well. I think it just needs to go onto a different presenter mode.
Okay, hang on. Sorry, it's paused, that's why. Monitor 1. Let me try monitor 1. Now, can you see?
That's so much better.
Okay.
Thank you very much. So if you've not been on a GoToWebinar before, you'll see the panel down the right-hand side. You are all in listen-only mode, so you don't need to worry about coughing or sputtering or birds running across the ceiling of your office. If you have a question, please type it in under the question area. You shouldn't be able to see a chat, but there is a question area. We will be dealing with questions at the end of the forum, not while we're going through, so you've got plenty of time to get questions in should you come up with them. Please avoid using the raise your hand option, because that will just raise a little hand next to you. Most of us as panelists won't see it anyway, so if you've got a question, please put it into the questions area and we'll pick those up at the end. A quick run through of the agenda for you. Perfect. First off, we are going to be having an update, a view from the chair. Dr. Anne Kemp will be filling us in on things that have been going on. We have then got Sarah Davidson, who will be going through an implementation update, looking at certain things that the UK Alliance have been working on over the last few months. Myself, I'll be up next. I'll be talking about the guidance feedback and how we're looking to get some focus over the next couple of weeks together to look at the ISO 19650 guidance and feedback into the team there. We then got Pam and Andy, who will be giving us an engagement update, along with Duncan, who's going to be talking about the communities. We'll be looking at the affiliates, the patrons, events coming up, and an update on the tech group, I believe. Finally, at 3:30, we have got a guest speaker, Tom Jarman from Waterstones, who will be talking about the view from the north, procuring for value, and BIM for good. After which, we've got a Q&A session, so get your questions coming in. And we're aiming to finish at around 4:15. Apart from that, the timing is going to be slightly flexible, so we can allow people to overrun or shorter as the case might be. But without anything further ado, let me please introduce the chair of the UK BIM Alliance, Dr. Anne Kemp, and her view from the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Nigel. Hello, everyone. Can we have the next slide, please? So I want to keep this pretty high level because I think that a lot of the actual business of the Alliance will be reported by others following. So there's three things that I really wanted to say to you in these rather unprecedented times. Is the first, I think for all of us, let's stay safe, let's look after each other. And if you're feeling at all daunted by the length of time that we could be in this situation, I just wanted to reflect on my own experience. Quite a lot of you will be aware that I was walking the Pennine Way for charity, which would have been over 19 days. I got 4 days in, 70 miles, 9,400 feet ascent, and I had to stop because of the Prime Minister announcement. Now, one of the things I would say is that that was for the long haul, that journey, but I think what's really important is that although apparently it would have been 1 million steps, the ways I approached it was every single step took me closer to my destination. And the ways I find I'm approaching this is every minute, every hour, every day that we get through this, we are closer to coming to the end. But in that time, hopefully that gives us the patience to do what we need to do to keep each other safe, to be considerate and to help and to be kind to each other. So the next point I wanted to make is to stay engaged. So don't feel lonely, don't feel isolated, reach out, use the Alliance networks, the Building Smart networks, which was being launched this morning. Keep talking to each other. You have those virtual coffee breaks or beer breaks or whatever, and try to keep the community invigorated. And then finally, what I wanted to say is, keep yourself stimulated and stay inspired. So what really inspires you? What can you find to uplift you? Now, it might not be technical stuff, but it could be. Maybe we have got some time to lean into cracking some of the problems around interoperability. Or maybe actually we're inspired by being able to help people to gain understanding. So if you have ideas like that, please get in touch with us. Please do feel that you can lean in. We're absolutely open for any help, any ideas that you can offer. So I hope those three things, stay safe, stay engaged, stay inspired, can really help you as we move forward over these next few weeks and months. But as a quick update on what's happening, things are still moving forward. So from an ISO 19650 point of view, Part 5 has moved to what's called the final draft information standard. So that should be being voted on and published by the summer. And Part 3, which is the whole life side of things, operation and maintenance, we are really excited that we got such great support internationally. That also now has gone forward to ISO to be published as the final draft information standard to be voted on. And we would hope that that would be coming out as the formal standard in the UK and Europe by the autumn. So things are progressing fast there. Sarah and Nigel will be talking to you more about the guidance, but just to remind you, the UK BIM framework with the Alliance working with British Standards Institution and with the Centre of Digital Built Britain, we're meeting regularly to review what material to put up on the website and what are the key projects that we need to really lean on to help implementation across the whole of the industry. You'll be aware that there has been an interoperability review. The evidence was finally submitted by the end of February. The report has been prepared and been presented to BAEs. That report should be being released in the next few weeks, if not within the month. I've got a final meeting tomorrow to discuss the outcomes of that. In tandem with the public consultation for the National Annex for ISO 19650 Part 2, key topics to be discussed and consulted on will be around information exchange and classification, and what we need to ensure is within the National Annex. So what we will be doing is we will be having a series of workshops virtually clearly now over the next 2 to 3 months, such that we can come to a conclusion with the National Annex and that be in parallel and keep aligned with the outcomes of the interoperability review. Without further ado, therefore, and I hope that you found that helpful, I'd like to hand back to Nigel. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Anne. Yes, you'll be hearing more about those workshops over the next couple of months as well. Thank you for the update there. Without taking too much time to the side now, I'm going to hand over to Sarah Davidson, who's been giving us an implementation update. Sarah is the implementation co-lead of the UK BIM Alliance. Over to you, Sarah.
Hopefully you can hear me, and thank you very much, Nigel. So an update on implementation. Firstly, just a reminder about what implementation is. The implementation arm of the UK BIM Alliance is focused on the facilitation of projects. So that's those that we can see a need for, or those that are proposed by you and your colleagues in industry and academia. So facilitation involves establishing the support required from the UK BIM Alliance and having a degree of project oversight. And that's so that we are prepared for the activities that we have to do with the UK BIM Alliance, and so that we can prepare industry for the impact of the project coming through activities such as our forum and the content. Your implementation team, might recall, if you're at the last forum, that we said a fond farewell to David Glennon, who I'd worked with over the last year and had been involved with the UK BIM Alliance for a time. He's now progressing his career overseas, and we wish him the best of luck. But we said at the Q4 forum that we wanted to bring on board more people, strengthen the engagement team. And that's really fundamental to our effective implementation of existing projects and our ability to bring even more projects through the UK Alliance. We received a really great response to our call for support, and everyone that we explored this opportunity with is now working with us in one capacity. But I'm really chuffed to be able to confirm that William Baker-Jones, Baron Soni and Ashley Marie are joining me as co-leads in the implementation. And you'll be seeing more of them at future events, and I think they've possibly dialed in today. And I'm just going to give you a quick overview. So I'm going to start with Ashley, who's a BIM specialist at McLaren based in London. So Ashley leads the BIM strategy at McLaren Group. She's got lots of experience in upskilling teams and delivering projects, right from the very beginning of a project through to handover. And she's got a varied background in design, in a client advisory capacity, and now also working from a contract. So Ashley's really looking forward to come on board with the UK BIM Alliance, and I think she really brings that practical flavour to the team, which will help. Moving on to Baron, who is an associate and a BIM manager with working out of their offices in Kent. So words from Baron here. He says that BIM has played a really important role throughout his career, and being able to create safer, better quality buildings whilst providing greater information for asset management teams is crucial for assets to be managed throughout their lifecycle. After working on projects that have been through the implementation, Baron has been involved with the UK Alliance before. He now sees this as a great opportunity to help existing and new projects gain traction, and thereby allowing for greater research, information and development within the industry to take place.
Sorry, Sarah, just before you go on, your audio, we keep getting every other word. Are you wearing a headset, or is there something you can do at all?
Oh dear.
You keep breaking up as you are speaking.
Just a second. Does that help at all?
It's helping right now, yes. Any more problems, I'll let you know.
Yeah, okie dokie. Okay. Do you want me to go back on anything, Pam, or should I just continue onward?
No, just continue, yeah, just continue.
Okay. So sorry about that, folks. Hopefully you can hear me a bit more clearly. So just moving on to William Baker-Jones, who's a senior BIM coordinator with Kia, primarily based in Exeter, covering all of the southwest of Kia. So I think William, he acknowledges the major experience that we're all going through now, and this move towards how we work and operate as an industry. And one of the things that is clearly coming out of this is our need to be digitally enabled. So I think William sees being able to use and help the UK BIM Alliance to facilitate this movement, particularly he says across the southwest, which tends to maybe look towards what the rest of the UK is doing and then to follow. And then just a quick reminder about me. So I moved into the University of Nottingham nearly 2 years ago, and I split my time supporting undergraduate and postgraduate programs, but also I remain in touch with what's going on practically in industry, working as a consultant, particularly looking at information management and modelling. And I'm also the editing author, or one of the editing authors, I should say, of the ISO 19650 guidance that we have released to date. So I'd like to give you an update about the projects coming through the implementation stream. And I'm going to talk about 5 projects today. So BIM maturity and benefits measurement, the guidance that we're developing around the ISO 19650 series, and just a mention then of the information protocol that is also being developed. I'm going to mention briefly common data environments. That's a technology group project that you'll hear a little bit more about later. Upskilling and digital competence, and then the work that the BIM Housing Association is agreed to do. I think the simple message is that we continue to be very busy in the implementation team. And maybe you are aware of some of these projects, but others will be new to you. So I'm going to start by talking about the maturity and benefits measurement tool project, which I have mentioned. I think if we can think back to late 2018, when ISO 19650 parts 1 and part 2.
Okay, Sarah, sorry, I'm going to interrupt you again. The sound is going back to breaking up every few words. When you started it again, it was perfectly fine, but it seems to have dropped back into every other word. I'm just trying to think what we could get you to do about it. Would you like to log off and dial back in and start from this, or do you want to carry on and see if it gets any better?
Well, I am happy to dial back in if you want to give that a go.
Should we do that? If we get you to dial back in, and if you want, we can start. No, because the next one up is Nigel, so he needs to talk about guidance. If you want to dial back in, everybody, if you could bear with us a couple of minutes while Sarah just dials in, and then we'll see if that's helped. Thanks, Sarah.
Okay, no problem.
So please bear with us, everybody, while we just try and get Sarah dialed back in. I'm sure you'll appreciate it if we can get the sound working better. So just hold on 1 second. Thank you.
So while Sarah's doing that, and she's just about coming on board, and we've been asked if you can share some of the pictures from your walk at some point, whether you want to do that now or later on, but just something for you so you're aware of that. Sarah, you're back in now, I believe.
Yep, I'm back here.
Okay. You need to share your screen again. Oh, let me just. So you're now presenter, so your screen should be up there. You
go. Okay. Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Let's see. Let's fingers crossed it works. Carry on.
Okay.
Thank you, Sarah.
Okay. So I was talking about the maturity benefit and benefits measurement tool, and I was just saying that the launch of ISO 19650 Part 1 and Part 2 in late 2018 triggered the Centre for Digital Built Britain to think about the capability of the industry to measure BIM maturity and to measure BIM benefits. So about a year ago, about this time last year, the UK BIM Alliance started to work with the Centre for Digital Built Britain to commission a research project that would explore the availability and scope of tools being used across industry. So this project, which is for the Construction Innovation Hub and is funded by Innovate UK, was awarded to a team last summer that is led by the University of Northumbria at Newcastle. And they've got a team that comprises themselves the BIM Academy, the RIBA and HKA. Now that work started with force in the summer and has recently just completed. So I'm really pleased to confirm that that the published report will be available for people to read shortly. And I think, Pam, that we're hopeful of welcoming the research team to one of our future events so that they can give us a detailed update on their findings. So I want to talk a little bit about the ISO 19650 guidance, which we've now been working on since the release of those two standards in 2018. So ISO 19650 Part 1 covers the concept of information management using building information modeling, and ISO 19652 covers the processes for project delivery. So towards the end of 2018, under the leadership of Anne Kemp, the group was convened to steer the path and content for guidance to support those standards. And since then, I think it's really fair to say that we've had a truly collaborative team effort in play. Now, that's not just the collaboration of the individuals that have put themselves forward as authors and to provide feedback, but it also represents the working partnership of the UK BIM Alliance, the Centre for Digital Built Britain and the British Standards Institution. And together, we're providing the UK BIM framework, which comprises international and British standards and the associated guidance. So guidance to date has been developed to support the transition from the 1192 series to ISO 19650. And we've got guidance for ISO 19650 Part 1 and guidance for ISO 19650 Part 2. When you look at the UK BIM framework website, you'll also see that there's guidance associated with BS 8536, which covers soft landing. All the guidance is available through that website. Just to give you an update on where we are with Part 1 of the guidance, so that was released in April 2019, and it's been updated once towards the end of last year, and we anticipate that it'll be updated later this year when the information protocol is released. So that guidance provides an overview of the concepts associated with the ISO 19650 series, but it also includes a really helpful and more detailed guidance about the implementation of the ISO 19650 series in conjunction with the CIC BIM protocol. And I think if you haven't done so, it's worth a read, especially if you're not involved in the day-to-day management of information, but you have some sort of stake in it. And I suspect that that is probably all of us. So the guidance Part 2, and this is the bigger focus of our efforts. We've been working on this since probably around about April last year, is now on its 3rd edition. It provides an insight into the specific requirements of ISO 19650 Part 2, which are covered in Clause 5. It sets out the activities to be undertaken at the beginning and the end of a project. But also, that Clause 5 also details the activities that need to be taken at each appointment within a project. So the 3rd edition, which we released in January, it introduced a number of new core themes. So it always had about ISO 19650 parties and teams, but we've introduced a section on resources as well. The 2nd edition had content around the common data environment, which was authored by John Ford of Galliford Try. Then the January edition included a section called About Information Requirements, which has been authored by Emma of Von Bryan. And then also we introduced a new section called About the BIM Execution Plan, which has been authored by Jack Taylor of ISG. What I would say is that every author that takes on board readership per piece of content is supported by a team, and that's a team that's both providing feedback to the content but also helping to shape the content. For the resources that I just mentioned, which was a new content included in the 3rd edition, that covers a resource map. And what you're seeing on screen now is only an extract of that resources map. So it's worth taking a look at, because some of the resources might sound familiar to us because we're familiar with PAS 1192. And the 2 resources there are the BIM execution plan and the employer's information requirements, which takes the same abbreviation EIR as the exchange information requirements that are in ISO 19650. Now, although there are similarities, there are also some differences. And what the resource map does is sort of inform what goes into an invitation to tender, what you would anticipate to see as a tender response, and then what you would anticipate to see in a lead appointed party appointment and also in an appointed party appointment. It also picks up on those resources which might be informing others. So if you look on screen at the moment, there's you can see that there's a reference to assessment of task team capability and capacity sitting beneath the prospective lead appointed party tender response. And that goes in to inform the delivery team's capability and capacity that's proposed at the tender sub-response stage. We've also got the process map. Now, that was part of the 2nd edition of the guidance. So what the process map does is it allocates each of the clauses according to activity and according to party undertaking that activity. So there's an overview of it. So we can see, for example, that the appointing party kickstarts off the new project, and then all of the clauses in subclause 5.1 and subclause 5.2 are appointing party activity. But then we can see that once we get into the tender response, that's the lead appointed party activity. And we can start to see a degree of interaction then with appointed parties. So that overview just highlights the clauses. And then as we delve into that process map, which is available as an interactive resource, or you can download it, we can understand more of the detail behind each of the clauses. And then each of the subclauses within clause 5 has been considered in a degree of detail. So each subclause has been analysed, and we've got commentary identifying who the primary and contributing parties are, when the activity within the clause should be carried out, level of the activity, so whether that's a project level activity or an appointment level activity, plus an insight into the specific requirements, and where we can, we give examples and hints and tips around the contents of the clause. And then there's also a summary of activities for that clause and signposting to related clauses. And then new content that came in with the 3rd edition to sit alongside Emma Hooper's information requirements content was an annex giving examples of organisational information requirements and asset information requirements. So I've mentioned a few names so far, and it's not an understatement to say that the part guidance is a monumental effort by a fantastic group of people who continue to invest their time, their knowledge and their expertise in the development of this resource, which we really hope is helpful and informative. So in the next edition, which is due to be released at the end of the month, and I have my fingers crossed there because we really don't know how things are going to pan out for us in the UK over the coming months. We're going to see additional comments, and at the moment we are planning for Emma Hooper's content around exchange information requirements, and Rossiter's content around open data, and John Ford, who's going to be developing content around planning. And I'm really pleased as well to say that for this next edition, we've got Marcia Volpagni from MACE, who is going to be giving some insight into the level of. So it'd be really great to get your involvement in the guidance in whatever capacity suits you. And there'll be information at the end of the forum today telling you how to offer this support. So as Anne mentioned, ISO 19650 Part 5 and ISO 19650 Part 3 are due out later this year, and we'll be developing guidance to support these new standards in due course. I think the last point that I would just like to make around the guidance is, and the work that we're doing, is that a new information protocol is now significantly advanced, and we're just undergoing review, and we're anticipating that will be released shortly as well. That'll trigger an update to the Part 1 guidance. So we'll wait for that to come out. So that's an update around guidance. A couple of other projects to mention to you. So you'll hear more about the CDE project later today when we provide an update about the technology group. But if you're familiar with the ISO 19650 Part 2 guidance, then it does contain very comprehensive information about the principles of common data environments according to ISO 19650 Part 2. And that's the carefully considered work of John Ford of Galliford Try. It provides a detailed insight into the management, sharing and naming of information containers. So this continues to be a dynamic subject area, and the technology group is really keen to explore it further. So over the last couple of quarters, I guess, the UK BIM Alliance has been working with Phil Reed of Man and Machine to develop guidance to support organisations in the UK to understand the key areas of knowledge required so that we can continue to build an agile and digital competent construction workforce. So we're looking at upskilling and digital competence guidance in two parts. The first part of the guidance is hopefully going to be released over the next few months and is being developed to support the UK BIM framework. It will include a description of key learning modules that we need to cover, or we need to have covered by training service providers, so that we can ensure that students or participants have the right and consistent body of knowledge. And it'll be based on that body of knowledge published by Building Smart under their professional certification standards. Their basic program. Phil is working with us, is leading a learning outcome framework content working group to create a national model in respect of the UK framework. And that's going to define the key knowledge that organisations should be looking to develop in their staff to ensure that they have a degree of competence when working on projects underpinned by the UK framework. And then the second component of the guidance is going to focus on accreditation, on certification underpinned by the UCAS, the UK Accreditation Service. And we're hopeful of a formal launch of that programme towards the second half of 2020. And then the last project that to give you an update about is the work that we're doing with the Housing Association Group, who is working with the National Housing Federation. So they're putting their efforts on the development of asset information requirements and exchange requirements, and they're developing guidance looking at how to procure services and services scope for the delivery of client-side information management functions and activities. So we're working with that group to support the development of their report and to provide insight for some of the resources that they're looking to deliver. Now, they've stood up an asset group and a development group to take the project forward. The first stage, which is the development of a roadmap, we're just starting work on that, and that will be followed by the outputs themselves, which we anticipate will be available later this year. So Baron Sony, who's my implementation co-lead, and Sue Butcher, who you may know from just practicing and her involvement in a number of previous UK BIM Alliance projects, are heavily involved in that BIM for Housing Association project. So I'm going to finish by saying thank you on behalf of the implementation team for listening. I hope that despite the glitches in the sound, that the presentation has been informative and that you're encouraged by the work that we're progressing and you feel able to come forward with ideas of your own. I would say that no project is too big or too small or too complex or too simple. So we'll consider each proposal on its merit. All we ask is that you're clear on the detail of the proposal and how you anticipate the UK BIM Alliance might support that proposal. So our support might come in the form of connecting you with people across the community who have complementary expertise that could potentially work with you on the project. We can assist you in the presentation of the project. We can help promote your project through our network and through the websites and our forums. We can provide you with technical reviews in terms of the UK BIM framework, and we can assist with editing output. So you can propose a project to us via the UK BIM Alliance website. We'll then follow that up, collect a few more details about your proposal so that we can take it forward to review with the executive committee. And I'm really pleased that now we have an extended and robust implementation. We'll be able to respond to you quickly and in a helpful way. So just finally, getting in terms of involvement with the development of ISO 19650 guidance, then remember to listen out for direction on that later today. And I'll say thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the following presentation.
Sarah, thank you very much indeed. Just going to take a second to get my own screen on. I've lost my presentation here. And I will be giving you some additional information on the ISO 19650 guidance. Actually, just scrabbling around here trying to rewrite my presentation, as Sarah covered a lot of the slides I was going to go through anyway. So thank you. I'm going to take the next 15 minutes or so just to take you through some of the work we've been doing on the ISO 19650 guidance focus group. We had planned for today, actually, as part of this forum, to do a breakout session this afternoon on the guidance and actually going through a review of the documentation. We've had to change our plans, clearly, but what that got us doing as part of the focus group was thinking of alternative ways we can keep this going without actually stopping the initiative, with a meeting planned for the end of the month and a new publication of the guidance. We felt it was really important to make sure that we kept the feedback coming. Some of you on this call, no doubt, would have been involved in the first round of feedback that took place just before the part one of the guidance came out. We're planning to do something exactly the same or very, very similar now, without all being able to meet up in person, to make sure that our feedback gets into the next part of the slide. So first of all, let me just explain a little bit about the focus group and what we're set up to do. We are part of the team that works on the ISO 19650 guidance. We take part in all the meetings, and what we're there to do is to try and get peer review and input back from the industry as to how effective the guidance is. It's crucial with these kind of things to make sure that the guidance being written not just aligns with the documentation itself, but also makes sense to everybody. Whenever you're writing something, we say it all the time about email, it's so important to really read what you've written from somebody else's perspective, and what you've intended to say may not be what the other person picks up. So one of the things we're trying to do with the guidance focus group is to understand where it can be improved, but also where it's successful. What we don't want this to be is just an opportunity to say what's wrong. We need people to come back and tell us how to improve things. We're not looking for editorial guidance. We've got a team that's dealing with that, but what we are interested in is making sure that it's the best it can be. And part of this now, which is even more important than before and leads on from what Anne was saying earlier, is that it's about bringing us all together We are a UK BIM Alliance with the emphasis on Alliance, and that's all of us in here today, all the people we work with and we deal with as part of our jobs throughout the industry, trying to bring them together so that the UK BIM Alliance is giving one message out there, and it's the best message it can give. What we had planned to do over the next couple of weeks is to look at the guidance part 2. This one here, part 1's already been done, but we'll be revisiting that. But particularly looking at part 2 and how successful that is on its first couple of releases. As I said, originally, we were going to be breaking this down through the UK BIM Alliance communities and getting each one of them, or trying to encourage each one of them, to put on a workshop in the local region to actually do this. We're not saying that's not going to happen now, but of course, we've had to change our plans, and going remotely sometimes doesn't always allow us to make the communications that we expect to make. Online discussion is great, but if we had the 140 attendees here at the moment talking at once, we wouldn't be able to do anything. So we're trying to look at different ways of organizing it. But the way this focus is supposed to work is that the guidance documents and a review form, which I'll take you through in just a moment, is disseminated out to everybody. We're going to be doing that over the next couple of weeks. And again, I'll come on to how you can help with that at the end of this presentation. So for each of the groups, what we're going to have is then trying to encourage them to get review and comment. How that review and comment is done is not in the same way it was going to be, which is a series of roundtable workshops, actually sitting there and discussing things face to face, but we're still trying to work on best ways of doing this. When those comments are written down, basically they're all returned back through. They're compiled, which is one of my jobs, to make sure that we're not putting the same comment in 15, 20 times. Return that back to the guidance committee where the changes are considered. Of course, not all the changes will be taken on board. Some of them will be and have been up to this point. And then we're looking at trying to make this a continual effort. I'm not saying we're going to make the big push every quarter, but at the moment, what we're doing is trying to look at a large review to get feedback from the industry on how you feel that the technology, the guidance is being handled. There is, as I said, a guidance meeting scheduled for the end of April, so I'm trying to organise these feedback sessions now to get in ahead of that. There's no way that these comments will be in this next release, which is going to be hopefully scheduled not long after that, but we'll get it into the works and discuss it then. Now, Sarah's done a great job for me just now in her presentation and gone through some of the new items that are in the guidance. But what I wanted to do was just to take people through, if you're not familiar with it, how part 2 of the guidance is set out and what kind of things it contains, because this is going to be so helpful when you come down to actually reviewing it. What are the important parts to you? Are you somebody who is more interested in the process, in the responsibilities that your individual or you as an organization will be important to you? Or is it the technical details in further on in the document? So what I'm just going to take you through is each of the sections in turn, just give you an overview. I'm going to try and not repeat what Sarah said. But part 1 is about the understanding the roles and responsibilities. It's actually very clearly set out. I was most impressed when this came out myself, in the fact that it breaks things down by who you actually are and what responsibilities are available to you, both per the project and actually as you work through the workflow of the project, what documents, what information you are expected to input into, to be preparing, or to just give feedback into. Section 1.5 is one of the really useful ones as far as I'm concerned, and that gives a table of all of the resources that a project needs to consider that are listed in ISO 19650. And you'll see here from the slide, it lists the actual information that's required, who it's actually created by, whether it's a project level or appointment level, the status of that information that goes out, and crucially, the clause that it relates back to, so that you can actually go and check up on exactly what is expected you of that. Now, if you're familiar with ISO 19650, that may be the way to do things. But if you haven't sat down and read it in detail, what I would honestly suggest is you start with this guidance and work through that before getting into ISO 19650, because it does actually make it a lot clearer. Section 2 is a very good section. which explains the common data environment. And what it tries to take you through is all the various different components that make up a common data environment, both in terms of the process and the solution that make a common data environment. It goes through the process that we're very familiar with, going from work in progress to shared through to published and archive, but it also covers the metadata that's required. And more importantly, how the revision control is supposed to work and the statuses that are supposed to be used. Again, reading through this, you'll get so much more insight in how it's supposed to work rather than just diving straight into ISO 19650. And particularly table 12, which I think is a great job. It's a step-by-step, you see the steps down the side here, of how a document should be prepared and go through the revision process. Section 3 looks at the different information requirements. And as Sarah has said already, the EIR guidance is due this April, but it covers at the moment the organizational information requirements, the asset information requirements, and the project information requirements, who and when those requirements are generated by, how they are needed, and most importantly, how they are used from an appointing party's perspective to apply it to the organization or project as necessary. At the end of this section, there's a great checklist of actions that actually takes you through what you need to do. 4, that's all about the BIM execution plan. Moving on from the information requirements, about the response through that, the purposes of a BIM execution plan, and again, importantly for most of us, where we find the kind of confusion coming, the development from pre-appointment through to appointment. It's one and the same document, but this takes you through what is expected before appointment, how the client, the appointing party, can respond to that, and how you then work towards finalizing the documentation with a checklist of actions again at the end of the section to get the clearest message across. But then section 5, which Sarah went through in a bit of detail, I'm just going to show you each of them highlighted to make it clear how all these pages work, is detailed analysis of each of the ISO 9650 clauses. So as you'll see at the top here, it actually explains which clause it is. But then rather going through the official, sometimes official wording in ISO 9650, it starts to break it down. And that is who it applies to, nice and clearly there. Now you will notice that it says primary party. It doesn't say that's the only person responsible. Clearly with all of this, it is a collaborative effort, but this is who the primary party is, responsible for either beginning the documentation, delivering the documentation, or making sure that this is dealt with. Contributing parties below that, the other people involved, will be that. This one, as you can see, it's not really applicable to anybody else. And then when this information should be prepared. This one is before tendering, before the actual first lead appointed party is appointed. Over here on the right then, we've got the insight that Sarah did explain, and that's where it's tried to give you guidance and wherever we can, examples of what these actual clauses mean. They've all been written by different people, so when we're looking at the focus without actually knowing who the authors are, it's sometimes very interesting to see how well worded they are. It helps us feed back to the team to explain which ones are the clearest, which ones are the most easy to understand, and which ones actually are just a bit too lengthy or wordy and could be cut down to help. That's the kind of feedback we're looking from you guys as we move through this. There's a summary then of the activities that need to be done. Sorry, I picked a very bad example here that had none. But then at the bottom, where you need to cross-refer. The other 19650 Part 2 clauses that will help you understand this or move through the process of information management according to ISO 9650 as your project goes through. Finally, section 6, again, the one that Sarah went through, it's new added in. It's a flow chart of the information management process, as you can read here quite as well as I can. It's which clauses relate to each action for which party, but it's laid out in so much of a clear way that you can't always do with an ISO document. Nice diagrammatic flowchart kind of approach that shows you how the information moves through from one party to the other, and again, relates back directly to the clauses that are in ISO 9650 so you can understand exactly how it's supposed to work. So that's an overview. The way we're actually going to do this, and this is a new announcement for today, in fact we only came up with it this morning, is we're going to go through over the next couple of weeks a secondary review process of ISO 9650 Part 2 guidance, or the section guidance Part 2. But But how we communicate that is obviously a little challenging at the moment. As I said, workshops are going to be a problem. So we're going to go back to the principles that we had on the first round of communications. I don't know how many people here were actually involved in that, but the way we did it, we actually disseminated the documents for review. We got people to write their comments in on a standard spreadsheet, send it back to us, and then we had a round table meeting to actually discuss those and make sure we understood what the priorities were. So what we're looking for from you guys is input into this, and basically to volunteer if you have anything that you need or you have to say about this guidance. The kind of things we're looking for from everybody is, overall, how do you think the guidance is being received? Again, we're looking for the positives as well as the negatives. We're not just looking for things that are wrong, we're looking for the things that you like best. And that's, if you're taking it section by section and looking at it, which sections work best, which diagrams work best, most importantly, which of the wording is easiest to understand. And in terms of that, if you're looking at it broken down, which section are you reviewing and is it clearly understandable? Does it require a detailed knowledge of the relevant clauses in ISO 9650 to make sense, or does it make sense without it? Does it just provide clarification? Those feedback kind of items from you would be really helpful in understanding how to take this forward in the future. Is there anything critical that's been missed or could do with expanding? Do you feel, more importantly, that anything is ambiguous? One of the things that we find in our day-to-day business is that even the experts, if anybody follows some of the communications on Twitter, everybody has an opinion on how something is intended to be perceived, how it's intended to be implemented. That's what the guidance is helping us to do. So if there's anything in there that still is ambiguous, we'd love to hear from you. Ask us questions. It doesn't always have to be about suggestion. It can be, what does this mean? How is this supposed to be implemented? Does it mean this, this, or this? All those kind of things, however you prefer to put them down into writing, will really help us. And as I've said before, how could things be improved? And how does each section compare with each other? Which are the better ones? Which are the most difficult to understand? So aside from the considerations for review, how are we going to do this? Next week, we have a UK BIM Alliance Communities Chairs meeting. And what I'm going to be doing at that meeting for those attendees here who are part of the BIM4 groups or the BIM regions is to actually take them through how we can help to put spread this out through the regions. We are going to be sending them the review form, we're going to be sending them the guidance and asking how they can help with their members to spread this and get more feedback in through. How we do that? It could be through a smaller teams conference call. We've just taken on Zoom as a practice to actually have a look at that, and that's very interesting in the way it works on webinars, in the fact that it's actually got breakout rooms that we can split people down onto virtual tables to discuss things in smaller groups. More than happy to receive individual feedback directly through email. I'll give you the contact details for those later. Or maybe as an organization, you could join in with this as well. Share the review form on your SharePoint and have multiple edits on it so that people can comment on it. Again, if you've got Teams, that's the kind of things you can do with Teams through a document. The ideas are actually limitless while we're working in this remote working kind of way. The only thing we can't do is meet around a table, but we're making the effort. As Anne said earlier, it's about staying inspired and keeping in touch and making sure that we're all being able to continue work as normal. We're going to help with that as well as we can. But if all else fails, there is good old email. My email has gone up masses in use over the last couple of weeks because I can't always talk to people face to face. So to kind of move on, this is a simple screenshot of the empty feedback form. It looks a bit awe-inspiring if there's nothing in there, but if you're filling it in, and some of you will have done already, it's very easy for you to fill out. All we're asking you to do, these are just number clauses, items, so that we can relate to them later if I've got to talk to you about anything or one of the other focus group is talking to you about it. The next column is the clause. We always need to know which clause it is you're referring to so that we know which one we're commenting on. And that is the clause number in the guidance, not in ISO 9650. We're not asking for commentary on ISO 9650 here. We're asking for the guidance specifically. If it helps, list the original text. And then all we need from you is a couple of comments to explain what your concerns, your praise, your considerations are for how it can be improved or changed, or whether it's great as it is. This is brilliant, but this one's rubbish. And then finally, if you have a recommendation, we're not necessarily asking you to do, but if you've got a suggestion for the way the wording can change to make it clearer, or as I've said before, a question to help us feed back to the writers to be able to get their input into it, that's brilliant. Anything like that would really help. The last column is then about priority. And that's just a simple breakdown into whether you think it's absolutely vital, whether it's you know what, this could be a little bit clearer, but you know, we can work it out. Or actually, you know, it can be done a little bit of time in the future. What that helps us to do is that if we're getting the same comment back from 50 different people, we obviously need to be looking at prioritizing that, but it might not be that important. It might be that a full stop or a semicolon is in entirely the wrong place. As I said, we're not really looking at editorial feedback, but it gives us some idea. What the process then is that myself and the team, Mike Hudson is part of this team as well, if you know him, we'll be taking these, we'll be compiling them together and trying to work out which comments are the same, which ones should be the top priority. And if necessary, setting up a couple of online meetings with you guys as well to talk them back through if we absolutely don't understand what you mean, or trying to get a little bit more input from you so that we might be able to tie it into another bit of feedback that we've received. That's the way it's going to work, hopefully. And it worked very well before. Gosh, that was over 12 months ago now. So here, let me just summary as we move on to close up to 3 o'clock. Next Monday, I'm going to be circulating the review form. I'm going to be sending it out to anybody who wants to receive it. I'm going to be sending it to the BIM communities if they want to receive it, which gives us a 2-week opportunity to comment, to feedback, to fill in that simple spreadsheet, and then to send it back. Now, the only thing I need from you all before we actually do that is to get you involved. It's no good me sitting here and saying I'm going to send it out if I've not got any email addresses to send it out to. Some of you would be involved on the first cycle of feedback over a year ago. I've still got your email addresses. Thank you very much for volunteering. But if you're here and you're one of the chairs of one of the communities, the BIM 4s or the regions, please drop your email address over and say, yes, I'm interested in this ISO 19650 guidance feedback review cycle. That's a long term there. Drop your email across either to the guidance feedback at ukbimalliance.org or directly to me. I'm happy to receive your emails, nigel@involvedconsultancy.com, and get involved. This is for all of us, for the better of the Alliance. So thank you very much for your time. I'll now hand over to Duncan Reid, who's going to take over the next part of the presentations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nigel. Okay, well, while Pam is sorting out some slides for the next section, or showing us all a very nice sunset, thanks very much, Nigel. Thank you to Sarah. If you've got questions that you want to raise now, please use the questions form on the GoToWebinar. We seem to have lots of people trying to raise hands. We're not using that because we've got too many attendees. So if you've got a query, please can you do that through the question process. Thanks very much. Right, that's my filler done, and handing over now to Pam Bandal and Andy Bootle, who are the engagement leads for the UK BIM Alliance, before I do my bit about communities. Thank you very much, Pam.
Thanks, Duncan. Hi, everyone. 3 o'clock in the afternoon after a very long day, so we have a fair bit to cover, but we'll be as quick as we can. So I'm going to give you a quick update on the Alliance itself. Duncan will talk through some of the work that the communities have been doing. Andy will give you some updates on affiliates, and then I will take you through ambassadors, patrons, events, and some of the work that the technology group has been doing. So let's start with the Alliance. Now, this slide you may have seen. It's also a slide that Casey has done. So thank you for Casey for doing this. But the 10 things you need to know about the Alliance are that it's about you as the industry. It's the work you're doing as the industry, and you are the Alliance. The projects that the Alliance are doing are managed by the executive team. And you've heard from Sarah an update on what that includes. The Alliance is not a closed group, it is an open group. Anyone can get involved, but remember, it all is led by volunteers. Funding. We are currently funded by patrons and strategic partners. We don't receive any government funding as such, and I will share with you the latest patrons who've come on board around this. We are here to promote BIM as business as usual and support you on your digital transformation journey. There's a number of different ways of support areas, including the communities group, which is consisting of regions, and of the BIM 4 groups that are specific to you and the area that you work in. Duncan will take you through this in a moment. We also have a number of, our ambassadors. We have a number of ambassadors. I think we've hit 11 now. And they tend to be out and about as part of their day job where they promote the work of the Alliance. I'll introduce you to these guys shortly. It's all about connecting. It's all about connecting with each other and connecting with people you don't know. That's what the Alliance wants to do, and that's what we would like to help you to do. And finally, we want you to use or to contribute, as you've heard Nigel and Sarah say, to the guidance that's being published. So whether it is the guidance, whether it is the certification program, whether it is any of the other projects that you will have heard about and will hear about, we want you to get involved in those. I'm just going to run through an updated org chart. As I mentioned before, the exec team is the role of the exec team, or the committee in this case, is to manage the projects that are coming through the system, and they're supported by the implementation team, operations, Building Smart UK and Ireland, engagement, and the technology group. We then have a governance team that is made up of our non-executive directors, the strategic advisory group, and Syria, who are our legal entity. The UK BIM Alliance Communities Group have a much larger reach to the audience, the built environment sector, and they play a big part in this. And again, you will hear more about that in a couple of minutes. And then we have the wider built environment sector altogether. So this is what the organisational chart of the Alliance looks like, and it's to share that with you. Now, I've talked about the communities. I'm going to hand over to Duncan now to just run through some of the work that they have been doing. So Duncan, over to you.
Thank you very much, Pam. Right, if you want to advance it on one more slide then, please. So, UK BIM Alliance Communities Update. We have been working hard in the background with a new extended team of 8 people, which we'll introduce in a couple of slides' time, to try and share the workload, share the burden, and get out to the BIM 4 groups and the UK BIM Alliance regions. As you can see on the slide, we've got 19 regions and at least 20 BIM 4 groups. Some have been doing great work, some of them have been a bit more fallow at the moment, but have done previous good work in previous times. We're just trying to get ourselves aligned with all of them and see how we can revitalise that moving forward. So the first one, with the next slide please, Pam, is, go on, press the other animation. I'd just forgotten it was doing those. Is that we are looking to just have a sort of slight rebrand, but also just to bring things together nicely, that rather than being BIM regions, we're going to call all of them the UK BIM Alliance regions. So as you can see from here, for the various accounts that have been chosen, it now becomes UK BIM Alliance Southwest, or West Midlands, or Wales, or East, or all the other good ones that aren't listed on there, including Yorkshire and Humberside. So that's what we're going to do with the regions, to just kind of help people to understand how we go forward. And equally with the BIM 4 groups, and again, this is most of them, so please don't feel annoyed if you've been missed off, because we're sort of tracking everybody down and engaging now over the coming weeks to get in touch with all these groups, find out the good stuff that they've been doing, what they want to do going forward in the future, and how we can share the knowledge that they've gained within their groups to the wider BIM community through the Alliance generally, and just help with that wider knowledge sharing. Okay, next slide. And in order to help us to do that, Previously, we created the UK BIM Alliance Charter. That was in the good old days before the ISO was produced. So we've now revitalized this document. And again, we'll be going out as the leadership team for the communities to the various regions and community groups to ask them to sign up to this new charter to make sure that we're all clear and transparent as to what we are offering as the leadership team for the communities and regions and what we're expecting from them moving forwards. And as it says on the slide here, and Nigel has already mentioned, there is going to be a communities chair call, our second online meeting, being held on the 6th of April. So if you missed our one in January, or you didn't hear about the one we had in January, please get in touch on that communities@ukbimalliance.org email address, and we'll make sure you're added to the attendee list for that. Okay, and the next one is who we all are. So we've talked about this extended leadership team now. Previously, Jill Guthrie at Wilmot and Dave Owens at Costains were doing a sterling job trying to herd everybody together, but the task really was quite large. So fantastic work done by them, and we aim to try and fill their shoes with now 8 people to do the work that they were doing with 2 or something like that. So we have Craig, myself, Adil, Jason, Mike, Nigel, Steve and Christine, who represent a variety of either BIM regions or BIM communities already. And the 8 of us are now meeting regularly to work out the strategy and how we can share the load of being key contacts to all of the regions and communities groups. Again, just to make sure that the message is getting out clear and clear to all of those groups and regions, but also that feedback from those groups and regions is coming back to the Alliance as what needs to be done. So those are my slides. I think the next one is now for me to hand over and mute myself to Andy. So Andy, over to you.
Thank you, Duncan, and good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me clearly, and not so clearly that you can hear my disgruntled 7-year-old who is upstairs currently, so I hope he stays there, and if there's any screaming or shouting in the background, it's him. Okay, if you could just move a slide on, Pam, that'd be great, and I'll explain about the affiliates program. Okay, so starting, what is a UK BIM Alliance affiliate? So the program, again, we've got a leadership team behind this, which I'll come on to, but the program aims to bring together some of the sort of key professional institutions and trade associations to work with the UK BIM Alliance and each other, you know, for consistent messaging and a shared understanding for what we're trying to do in the UK for BIM adoption and implementation. I mean, we've got a note on there saying obviously there's silos that exist, and of course there are silos. Each organisation has a focus, whether it's, you know, disciplinary, professional, or a specialism, but there is very limited working across those silos. So that's what we're trying to encourage, because we really do, as an industry, have to start to work cross-organisational to get to that future state of digital transformation that we're all hoping and aiming for. So the team have been working really hard over the last few months, and we've made some real progress, actually. So all of the organisational logos you can see on the slide attended a briefing session, which we held back in February, where we got everyone around the table and talked through a slide deck, which was effectively a proposal for what this affiliation means. And that covered a number of topics and things that the UK BIM Alliance can offer those organisations, and also then things we'd like in return to help that journey along. I'll just pull out a couple on each of those. So the things that we're offering are, and we've mentioned it earlier, so interaction to the UK BIM framework, whether that's getting involved in the guidance, the peer review piece, workshops, as Nigel and Anne mentioned, and really coordinating that and bring it together for each affiliate organisation and any of their membership that's interested and leans into that. Touching back on the Building Smart UK and Ireland piece that Casey talked about this morning, there's also, we can facilitate interaction to rooms and coordinated effort there, and also assist with any internal events. A lot of these organisations have their own specialists within them, you know, trying to help upskill the membership and put on content and speakers, and we'd offer to facilitate and support that along with them. And then some of the things we'd like in return, well, you know, it's really important, consistent messaging and a shared understanding, as I've mentioned. So using their reach to get out to that massive wide membership. Again, it's about getting the messaging out there past the bubble that we work in this sort of quite specialist space. So placement of the website, a link through to the BIM Alliance guidance and information and projects, and really just trying to massively extend our reach into industry. So we have made progress. So we've got the agreement in place. We're now, as a team, following up with the organisations listed. I'd imagine under the current climate, that's going to be even more of a challenge than it normally is. If there's any of you on the call that, obviously there'll be those of you that are members of some of these organisations and you think you can help, we do have contacts, but if you think you can help, please do get in touch via the email or social media, and we'd welcome that. Pam, if you can just pop to the next slide, just again, celebrate the team who are doing a massive amount of effort with this in the background. So Gary Fannon, he's sort of taken a bit more of a lead role with the team in coordinating efforts between us. We've got Steve Faulkner, who's actually involved in the communities leadership as well as the affiliates team. John Adams from Glider Tech, Maxine from Wilmots, and Andrew Gamblin, Gary from ACO, Nick Leach from Robert McAlpine, and Stephen McGee, who's our newest member actually, who joined us a month ago. So thanks to the team for all your efforts. Okay, that's the affiliates over. I shall hand back to Duncan, I believe, or Pam. Thank you.
It's me. Thank you. And Dan, just to answer your question, I don't believe Andy is presenting from his bathroom. I think it might be his dining room. So yeah, just
with a glass table and a hard floor. So apologies, it is an echo.
Okay, so thanks, Andy. I'm going to introduce some of our latest ambassadors and then share the patrons with you as well. So from an ambassador's point of view, we have had 3 new ambassadors join us recently. So you have Vicky Reynolds, you have Ray Purvis, and you have May Winfield, who are joining a team of others, including Dan, Marcia, Rick, Paul, Andrew, Louise, John, and Emma. So these are the guys who, as part of their day job, go out and positively promote the Alliance, its strategic aims and objectives, as like I say, as part of their day job. We do call on them to also get involved in presenting when others aren't available. So we will give them the option of presenting as part of events throughout the UK as well. So they do go and speak at events as well for us. If you want to get involved as an ambassador, go to the website, click on the ambassadors page, and all the instructions will be on there. There is a term of reference or an MOU for each of the ambassadors that they have to sign up to. So what will happen is you send an email and it will be me responding back to you with that, and then we'll take it from there. So these are our ambassadors, and I'd just like to say thank you to them for getting involved and taking this on. As mentioned, we do not get any government funding. We do have, if the slide moves, sorry, apologies. We do have a number of platinum patrons, and these are our tops. Well, these are our 6 platinum patrons, with the latest one being HS2, who've joined the other 5. And then we have patrons across the technology sector as well. So these are the ones that we have currently, and these are the patrons who we're working with, not only because they give financial help, but they also get involved in projects. A lot of the patrons are members of the technology group, which I'll come to shortly, and then a lot get involved in giving up their time or help us out with providing venues as well. So they're our patrons, and I would just like to say thank you to all of our patrons and our supporters who, without, we wouldn't be able to function in the way that we're functioning today. Now, as you know, we aren't allowed to leave our houses at the moment. Well, certainly not to attend an event as such. So we've had some event changes taking place. The one that I know for sure, GeoBusiness, was our next large scheduled event due to take place in May. That has now moved to the 24th and 25th of September at Excel. there is a list of events that the communities are organising, and you'll be able to reach them via that link on the website. We've got the Think BIM half-day conferences that I think, and Duncan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe the next one will be a virtual one. And then we have UK BIM Alliance Southwest hosting a number of events, as well as the East team, as well as BIM for Estates. Now, if you are, like both Duncan and Nigel have mentioned, if you are a channelist, if you are a chair of one of the BIM 4 groups or one of the UK BIM regions, and you have a number of events, send them through to us so we can add them to the website. So those are the events side of things. I'm sorry, I have no more news on what the upcoming events are currently, because like I say, everybody is in the middle of rescheduling or cancelling and everything else. As we get updates, we'll update the website. As mentioned, a number of our patrons are members of the technology group, and we have recently welcomed 4 new members at Vero, A-Site, Procore and Revitso. So they're our latest members of the technology group, and they join the other members that we currently have. So the technology group is open to anybody who is providing technology to the built environment. And recently what we've set up is a CDE focused group, and specifically to discuss feedback on the CDE advice written by John Ford in the guidance part 2. So we are currently collating that feedback, which will then be shared with both John Ford and the editors of the guidance, who are Sarah Davison and David Churcher. CDEs are a hot topic at the moment, and at the recent BIM Show live event that took place at the end of February, we hosted a panel session where Paul Wilkinson, as chair of the technology group, led a conversation with 5 of the members that you can see on this slide here. So that was quite an informative discussion, and we will be sharing some of the feedback we've had with you guys through the newsletter. The technology group also got involved in the BIM Inspiration Day. John Adams challenged school children to decide whether the Newcastle hub of the Northern Arc Hyperloop was going to be positioned. So he delivered, I want to say a presentation, but it was more of an interactive discussion with slides, videos, and then getting the children to work out where it should be positioned. If you want to be part of the technology group and you supply technology to the built environment, then get in touch via the dedicated email address, which you can see at the bottom of this slide here. Now, my element of this presentation is over. I'm now going to hand over to Casey, who will take us through some of the work Building Smart UK and Ireland have been doing. So bear with me, I just need to make you a presenter, Casey, so that my screen is not shared and yours is. And there you go, Casey. You are now a presenter.
Thank you very much, Pam. Okay, so we don't have long left in today's session, but I'd like to firstly apologise to anyone who joined the session this morning. This will be a little bit of a repeat, but I'm going to skim through a lot of it. So this morning we held the first Building Smart's Assemble forum. This was supposed to be in person, face-to-face, as the morning session of the forum due to be held in Newcastle. Unfortunately, things have changed, and where we are online. You don't know me. This is me. This is what I do. I am currently Vice Chair of the UK BIM Alliance, Chair of Building Smart UK and Ireland. I sit on the drafting committee for B555. And I'm founder and co-chair of BIM Open Mic events, although I don't need to be if anyone else wants to host one. Today, I'm talking obviously with my Building Smart International hat on, and also my Vice Chair UK BIM Alliance hat. So In terms of what we're going to discuss here, I'm going to give you a little bit of context about what Building Smart UK and Ireland is in the context of Building Smart International. Quick skim through how we're organised and what the different membership levels are, what the activities are, and how you can get involved. But first, as I said this morning, we are BIM people. We do love an acronym or an initialism. So here's potentially 2 new ones. For Building Smart International, we've got BSI, and rather confusingly, there is also another version of BSI, which is all lowercase, which is the British Standards Institute. So it does sometimes get confusing, particularly as they are quite interrelated in what we're doing. Building Smart UK and Ireland, therefore, is often referred to as BSUKI. So if you hear me saying that throughout this presentation, then hopefully you'll know what it is, and I apologise for using that acronym. So this morning we held a Slido poll, really to reaffirm what we kind of knew already, and that's that actually even amongst the people who are in the know when it comes to BIM-related things, actually they're not fully aware of what BSUKI is and how they can contribute and what actually happens within Building Smart. Added to that, a greater number of people answered this second question, and 87% of them said they weren't even signed up as members of Building Smart UK and Ireland. Obviously, if they're not signed up, they're unlikely to have attended or joined in a virtual Building Smart room, which the figures contribute to. But really positively, almost all, aside from 2 people, I think it's 3% to be, everyone wants to get involved, or everyone on the call wanted to get involved. Whether they have the time or whether they are able to is the difference in those figures you're seeing. But really encouragingly, people do want to get involved. And we said this morning, I think when the UK government mandate kicked in and people started to deliver projects, they started to realise that in order to deliver COBE, often the best way to do that is via IFC. And when we're starting to exchange information back and forth between different parties for various different reasons, IFC really was the way to do that. When we're using multidisciplinary teams, using different pieces of software, and really trying to get a grip on how we're translating and transferring different pieces of information. So that really leads us on to understanding why we're doing what we're doing now in basically trying to make more of the industry aware of what Building Smart UK and Ireland is, the fact that it sits within the UK BIM Alliance. They are not competing bodies by any means whatsoever, and that basically, as Pam mentioned earlier, Syria is the legal entity that governs us as a group of 2 separately named organisations, but a lot of the personalities and people involved are similar. Obviously, then Building Smart UK and Ireland sits within its international context among the other regional and global chapters. And if anyone didn't already know, this is what Building Smart is. So Building Smart is a worldwide industry body driving the digital transformation of the built asset industry. I'm going to skip to the bottom line. Building Smart is an open, neutral, international, not-for-profit organisation. So if we're looking to communicate what Building Smart is, and they're fearful that they're going to be asked for lots of money, it's not always the case. We need to know that any monies that are contributed go directly towards supporting the development of new international standards. Interestingly, from the Building Smart UK and Ireland perspective, anyone can be a member of Building Smart UK and Ireland. So it doesn't matter who you are, what company you're from, what size your company is, you can all engage with Building Smart UK and Ireland at the Assemble sessions that we'll hold every quarter on the morning of the UK BIM Alliance Forum events. Ultimately, maybe if they end up being in person again, then we'll do those in person also. So anyone can join, but at the same time, it does cost some money to operate Building Smart International. So all contributions, financial or time-wise, are all gratefully received. And Building Smart International do have various levels of corporate and company membership. And there are different scenarios, and we're yet to work out the intricacies of how money flows from one organisation to another, depending on where a company approaches which part of the organisations. So in this scenario, we've got a company, probably UK based, becoming a patron or supporter of the UK BIM Alliance. They obviously have access to Building Smart UK and Ireland. And Building Smart UK and Ireland have the opportunity to assign a representative for a particular room, and we'll come on to the rooms in a minute, to represent Building Smart UK and Ireland at that international level. Scenario 2 is a company approaches Building Smart UK and Ireland and becomes a company member. Now, obviously, they also have access then to becoming part of the Alliance and contributing to that and joining in all the events that we do. But then we've got the third scenario where an international company approaches Building Smart International and they become what they call a multinational member, and they will select, hopefully, the UK and Ireland chapter as one of their 5 global chapters that they can join and integrate with. So that's how different people can join in at different companies, sorry, can join in at different levels. But basically, all we need to know for the moment in terms of joining in and contributing to Building Smart UK and Ireland, anybody can do so at no financial cost. There are, as I said, financial company memberships, and this is a direct extract from Building Smart International's website. You can use standard, multinational, or strategic membership levels, and they give you the various benefits that you can see on screen right now. In terms of the chapter organisation, a diagram similar to one that Pam showed earlier, we do have a committee. We do have to deal with, in that committee, various things relating to membership, to finances, to Building Smart International and the relationship there, engagement with the industry, and then the rooms and projects that go within there. Now, outside of that, and we've already had really good feedback this morning, we've got lots of people wanting to engage from a steering group perspective and perhaps some help in any of the topics we can see on screen now, perhaps become part of the committee. And then outside that, we have industry and community contributors. And again, lots of support and enthusiasm for doing that. And then the last layer of the onion, if you like, is the industry and community observers. And they are equally as valuable, because a lot of this is about sending out the right message about what Open BIM is, what Building Smart and Building Smart International and UK and Ireland is. And hopefully what we're aiming to do is to project enough positivity about it to enable us to bring back other people into becoming actively involved and engaged. So what I introduced this morning was something that I like to call the Bazooki 4 Vs. And that's basically that we want to take Building Smart International and make it vast within the UK and Ireland. We want to make it vibrant, vital, and valuable. We can do those various different things in different topics, different ways, methods, and making it vast is about awareness, engagement, communication, and commitment. Becoming more vibrant is about encouraging people to be involved, making it applicable to what the needs of the UK and Ireland are right now in terms of Open BIM. Supporting people to contribute and maintaining a level of enthusiasm that enables people to see why and see what for and see what needs to be done. Also being vital, being productive, we do need to meet the industry needs, and we need to have a voice at an international level. And we need to be concise. We're not here to waste anybody's time. A lot of us are giving all of this, or all of us are giving our contributions to both Building Smart and the UK BIM Alliance as free time. And we need to make sure that what we do is time well spent to get the best results. And adding to that, we need to make these things valuable, represent the UK and Ireland, targeted involvement in the right things that get the results that we'd like, with timely advice. And above everything, I think it's to make this not just for experts. This needs to be made, and it's an international challenge as well as just a UK and Ireland one, but we do really need to make sure that Open BIM and IFC becomes much more applicable to many, many more people. So key people so far, we have me as the chair, we have Nick Nisbet as the vice chair, Emma Hooper, one of our UK BIM Alliance champions, is a business manager, David Owens and Alan Hoare from CETA in Ireland. We are there, but we do absolutely need more people and more help. As we said, we are not there to be Building Smart UK and Ireland. We're there to manage and project manage the challenge, the individual projects and tasks that need to be done. So we are absolutely hoping that a lot more people will engage with us, join in the conversation, and get things moving forward and share the knowledge about Open BIM. In terms of activities, in terms of what Building Smart International do, again, direct screen grab from the website, but you'll see there that on the standard sides of the thing, they've got the IFC, which most people will be familiar with, got IDMs, information delivery manuals, we've got BCF, which is the BIM collaboration format, model view definitions, MVDs, and then standards and resource libraries. They've got a lot going on within the standard side of Building Smart International, and it's all contributed to around the world by leading experts in various different sectors. In terms of rooms, Building Smart International have rooms to do with airports, buildings, construction, infrastructure, products, railways, regulatory and technical. As I mentioned earlier, Building Smart UK and Ireland have the opportunity to have a representative in each one of these rooms at international level. And as far as I'm aware, we don't have anyone as a registered member that can represent the UK and Ireland at in each of these rooms. So we really do need that representation. It's certainly not going to come from the list of people you just saw as the committee, the current committee. We are looking for people to contribute time and represent the UK and Ireland chapter in each of those rooms. Also, certification. A lot of people may be already familiar with the fact that Building Smart International do carry out the certification for software to make sure it meets the requirements of various different exchange information tasks. That's normally what they're doing. They do still have a bit of a backlog as far as I'm aware, but they also need as much help as they can get. And we have individual professional certification program now, just being launched and being developed. The UK chapter will be a point of contact for any training centre that wants to become certified as a training centre, which will then lead to individuals running through a training program and taking an assessment and gaining their individual qualification for certain tasks and roles within the process. And that's the primary difference between company certification that we have a lot of bodies offering at the moment, which is to do with having the processes and materials in place to be able to deliver, and then demonstrating use of those documents and processes through the projects, through their surveillance visits. This is a similar thing, but for individuals, to show that the individuals have the experience and knowledge and understanding to be able to perform particular roles and tasks within a project delivery. I think it was Sarah that mentioned earlier, we have Phil Reed, who is leading from the Building Smart UK and Ireland perspective, making sure that we in the UK have our education side of things, and education voice listened to at the international level. We also, if anyone on the call has been using or been familiar with IFC and OpenBIM, will understand that we're starting now to talk to lots of other different parties who aren't necessarily people involved in doing things in our built environment, but they're starting to look at our data anyway. So the technical roadmap for the future of IFC is entitled Getting Ready for the Future by Building Smart International's Technical Director, Leon van Berlo. And it does address or seek to address a lot of the challenges that we have already seen and that we know are coming up either now or in the near future. So for me, the last box there on the bottom right is the key one. It's aiming to lower the access thresholds. So making all of these processes a lot more achievable for as many people as possible. So what we'd like to do is to understand who you are and what you can help with. So what's your discipline? What's your specialism? What's your interest? What time commitment can you offer us? And what's your appetite? What really excites you? What can you do and what would you like to do? We are not looking to force people to do something they're absolutely not interested in. We are looking to encourage people to get involved, to investigate what can help them in their sector with their discipline, and start to develop Open BIM and IFC in the way that we need to in the UK for the jobs that we're doing right now. So with that in mind, and with our joint statement about developing a standard process for delivering the UK BIM framework, this is very much part of it, both now and potentially in the future. We'd like your support. As Andy has said, as Nigel has said, as Sarah has said, UK BIM Alliance, Building Smart UK and Ireland all do need more resources, more help, not only to understand what your challenges are, but also to solve some of them as well. So this is a form that we put out this morning. If you can fill this in now, if anyone is on the call, either scan the QR code or the hyperlink is below. If you'd like to get involved, please do, or if you'd like to just keep up to date with our future forums and assemble meetings, news, then please do sign up, fill in, give us your details, and then we can start to gather more help to deliver what we need as an industry in the UK. Finally, if you do want to get in touch, there's an email address there. We've got the Twitter account. There is just, and Pam may be able to give an update on this. We have created a new channel on our Slack, on the UK BIM Alliance Slack group. So that should be ready by the end of the day. And we are creating a website or a few web pages to be hosted within the UK BIM Alliance website that dedicates itself to building smart, all the materials that have been created so far by the UK and Ireland chapter, and for future development of the chapter and the resources and the guidance that we can create there. So that's all for now. If there's any questions, pop them in the chat and we can deal with all those at the end. In the meantime, I think I'm handing back to Duncan.
You are. Thank you very much, Casey. And before that, thank you very much to Andy and Pam for their updates on the various strands of the engagement team. As you can see, there's a lot of people doing a lot of stuff. And if there are skills that you've got that you want to help us with, then we're always very pleased to have that. In the background, you can see we are now handing over to Tom Jarman, who is a senior business consultant at Waterstones. Back in the days when we thought this was going to be a face-to-face event, and Nigel and myself were busy organising what we wanted to have as the content and who we wanted to see, I was keen to get Tom back speaking. He's previously spoken at the BIM region in the Northeast and gives us a very good outline of how to do BIM for good in the North. So over to you, Tom. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I assume you can hear me. And I assume you'll message back if you can't. There were two things happening in the North that I wanted to give a sort of northern feel to. And the first is procuring for value, which is a national piece of work coming from the Construction Leadership Council. But in the Northeast, we really want to run with this because we think it's an area where we can add real value. And it's dependent on a community of practice, and we want to create that community of practice. And the other northern thing, which I was really excited about at BIM Show Live, was BIM for Good. And so that the northern connection there is the launch at BIM Show Live, although it is a national thing as well. I'll go through these reasonably quickly, partly because you can ask questions if there's stuff you want to delve more into, and also because my contact details are there if you want to contact me outside this. So I'm just trying to advance my screen on. So here we go. So I work for Waterstones. We're a technology company, and everything we do is about using technology to build better businesses and using technology to enable corporate strategy and help move businesses forward. We do a lot of industry engagement. There's some examples there, but the key thing, the reason why we do this is so that we can talk with a reasonable degree of confidence and insight about the road ahead and about what the bumps might be and how people can navigate those bumps successfully. Many people won't have heard of procuring for value, so I'm keen to do what I can to raise the profile. There are 3 principles behind it. It's client-led, outcome-focused, and it's costed over the long term or the whole life. I think that's really exciting. Imagine how different projects would look if those were the principles on which we were discussing them with other people. I'm not actually too fussed what people call it, whether you call it procuring for value or something else. It's the principles that are absolutely critical to me. So for example, there's a blog by PCSG on the major projects knowledge hub that talks about outcome-based contracting at Sellafield, which is really interesting as well, and very much a PFE type approach. The government, believe it or not, is moving in the direction of procuring for value much more consistently than is appreciated. So I wanted to briefly cover that as well. People don't believe it when I say that they are doing that, but here is my evidence. There is a number of reports, some of which are driven by government, some of which by other organisations, which I've briefly listed there, but all of those start to talk about outcome and value and move away from cost and start to recognise the hidden costs of lowest capital cost procurement and what it doesn't deliver and what the risks are. One I particularly want to draw attention to, which is why I've highlighted it as a hyperlink, is the Transforming Infrastructure Performance report from 2017. And in particular, this graphic from page 15, which takes a much more nuanced look at value rather than cost and how you can derive value. A lot of projects sit in the optimally spent box, and it is assumed that by optimally spending, you are delivering the other things that you can potentially deliver, but so often those are missed. And this has been quite an effective document within government. There's a really interesting quote. If you plough through the industrial strategy and come to page 197, or I might just save you some hassle, but there's this quote here. In the months ahead, the sector and the government will work to ensure procurements based on whole life value rather than just initial capital cost. Now, there's still a long way to go in terms of developing that into practice, but that is now officially government policy. It's captured within the Treasury Green Book. If people tell you they have to procure to lowest capital cost, they're wrong. And what they're often talking about is familiarity and habit rather than what they have to do, what is mandated. The intent within the industrial strategy was operationalized within the construction sector deal. It was also operationalized by the presumption in favour departments. I won't talk about these in detail because there's a hyperlink there for when the PDF of the slides goes around. But it's the presumption in favour of off-site manufacturing, and those are the departments which committed to that presumption in favour of off-site by April 2019. It's been a bit hitty-missy, it's not perfect, but it does mean you have very significant government departments attempting to take a value-orientated approach to what they do. And we also have the Transforming Construction budget, £420 million in total, currently all allocated on live projects. So what? Why am I talking about procuring for value? How does it make the boat go faster? And by making the boat go faster, I mean, how does it help create a dynamic construction sector, delivering top quality projects, a sector that people want to join and engage with? And the link between both procuring for value and BIM is clients. So I'm going to pick that up in slightly more depth. Many of you will be familiar with the cost influence curve. Procuring for value absolutely demands that clients start at the very beginning, and I mean really start there. So procuring for value asks quite searching questions about what you want as a client, about what you want to deliver, about how you interpret value. So I'm just checking for any messages in case people, okay, about how you understand value, but also, excuse me, there we go. That's where BIM needs to start as well. The BIM community needs clients to focus at the right point to really derive the value from it. Many of you will have seen this report. Again, I'm not going to go through in any depth, but it recognizes the benefits quite clearly. These are all benefits which we are familiar with as BIM advocates and people that are passionate about BIM. But also what it clearly highlights is the design, is the focus, on design and particularly construction. That's not its intent, but it's relatively easy to put a boundary around those benefits. And if clients aren't interested, that's where the benefits will will be located. So there is this element of clients being passive recipients. So if those recognized benefits take place, clients will benefit. But that is really, to some extent, dependent on luck. This was a really good graphic by John Ford at BIM Show Live about the process. And the things that are boxed out in red emphasize to me how poor and how shallow potentially the process is if clients aren't involved. We absolutely need clients on board to articulate what they need and to define it, and then to close the loop at the end. So BIM for Good, launched at BIM Show Live in February 2020, moves the thinking beyond the standards and processes and reorientates towards societal issues like carbon, aging, productivity. You could say that specification and compliance is still a sort of process or standard orientated. I tend to see it more as a halfway house, but I thought that was a really exciting pivot. So the critical things that BIM for Good is focusing on is to maximize efficiencies, improve sustainability, and create safer environments. There's a picture here of the Fukuoka. I've read it many times, but I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce it, but I've put it there because it's such a fantastic building. It's from 1994, so to what extent BIM was used, I'm not sure. But to me, this is a BIM for Good type of building. It's a fantastic looking building that starts to address the issues which we need to address as a society. It would be fantastic if BIM for Good is producing this sort of output as standard rather than the exception. So, but BIM for Good needs the same things as procuring for value. It needs clients to have a very clear view of what their project intent is. They need to understand how the value they want their investment to deliver. They need to understand what outcome they want from it, and they have to be quite disciplined, because you can't have every outcome you could possibly get. You really need to, even when you're talking value and outcome, focus down on the 3 or 4 things that you really want to happen. And when I say really want to happen, delivering a building that doesn't break the law at lowest cost isn't an outcome. Clients also need to understand how they're going to maintain a clear line of sight from intent to operation. There is no reason why one stage should completely distort this. So when we talk about procuring for value, it's often interpreted as, people pick up the procurement side more than the value side. But we do need clients do need a better line of sight in terms of how their project intent translates. And also, both BIM for Good and procuring for value requires clients to think how they're going to learn and improve. There has to be conscious choices about what learning and improvement and doing better look like. You may be familiar with these wheels. Certainly I've seen several knocking about. This is one used by Anglican Water, and this is their outcome. So this is what they want when they invest, and they will talk to suppliers and contractors and the supply chain on the basis of which they can effectively deliver these outcomes. The discussion about cost comes much, much later on. There's another wheel here, which is from the National Design Guide, about what they think a well-designed place looks like. Again, I'm not massively fussed about the content of a wheel in itself, but they are ways to express outcome. And I think both procuring for value and BIM for Good head towards a much more outcome-orientated way of understanding what a project is due to deliver. And then hopefully the client will design a wheel that works for them that we can then deliver. So whatever the wheel looks like, we're dependent on active and sophisticated clienting for long-term success. So where do we go from here? We have a LinkedIn group. There's a link to it there, Procuring for Value LinkedIn group. So I'm trying to build that up as a community of practice of people that are interested in procuring for value and want to understand more and share good practice. I always try and push positive challenge to clients. A lot of clients don't know about the direction of travel in government. It's worth engaging with them. Might need to distinguish between who wants to engage with value and outcome and who doesn't. But one of my frustrations is going to quite a few industry events and the people in the room not bringing their clients along. I think we could do more to bring clients in the room and get them in there and talk to them and challenge them. And also I think there's an element of focusing on transformational groups. I think social landlords, and there's a link to a blog there which I've written about this, are a transformational group because of the scale at which they operate, which is why I think the BIM for Housing Associations project is really quite an exciting piece of work. And I want to finish with a quote from Joe Biden. I enjoy my quotes, and I think this is a particularly good one. Don't tell me what you value, show me your budget, and I'll tell you what you value. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much then, Tom. That was really, really good. I think lots there to be learned, and hopefully lots for other people to take away as well. So thank you very much for that. And I'm presuming now, Pam, you are going to put us back onto...
Yep, trying to right now.
That's fine. I knew you were trying to do it. It was... Okay, so Tom, like the best client you could ever wish for, has brought us back on time rather nicely. So that's fantastic as well. So thank you very much to Tom, and over to our Q&A. Now, we've had some questions during the course of the afternoon, and hopefully our panelists have seen that I've been busy allocating them to them, so they've had some pre-warning of what's going on. So first up is a question about the Product Data Working Group report, and whether there is going to be a follow-up to that. Sarah, could you explain where we are with that group activity in terms of implementation? And then the pause while Sarah connects, I hope.
If Sarah doesn't, can you hear me? It's Anne Kemp.
We can hear you, Anne. Go on then, dive in and tell us.
Okay then, Sarah, do cut in if you want. So some of you will know that Paul Sorin gave a presentation on Monday with Building Smart International. Trish Macy also was on that with Sue. There has been a pause to decide what to do. There's been a lot of activity within CEN. So there's a standard being worked on, which Trish and Paul in particular have been involved with. There's clearly also been some advance with CIH, now BRE and CPA. So the honest answer is it is time for us to regroup on that, to reassess where we can go to make sure that as the Alliance we're not impinging or conflicting with anything else that's going on. But I think there has been some useful advances, certainly over with CEN, with the development of the standard, and it would be good to get relevant people together again to say, okay, so now what we would do. I don't know whether Trish is on the call. I know Paul was a little bit earlier, but I would be suggesting to Sarah that we ask Trish and some of the people who were in that original group, whether they could now advise and help us in taking the next steps forward.
Okay, so that's CIH's Construction Innovation Hub.
I do beg your pardon, yes, so the Construction Innovation Hub. So you've got Stephen Yeomans of BRE, who is actually taking a lead on this, working with CPA, but at the same time there is a parallel activity going on at CEN, which British Standards Institution is also involved with. So there's a number of different groups of which I touch a few of those, but also people on the call or who have been on the call have been involved. It's definitely, the time is ripe to see how we can help to facilitate the way forward on that.
Okay, thank you very much for all of that, Anne. Next question was around whether there was going to be more detailed guidance around EIRs.
I'm here now.
Brilliant, thanks Sarah. I'll
Yeah.
finish this question and then yes, it's coming in your direction again, although this is an easy one to let you back in with. So there was a question about the 3rd edition of the ISO 19650 guidance, that there wasn't necessarily a huge amount of information on EIRs, but I think this was asked before Nigel talked about them. But if you just want to explain what's happening in terms of EIR guidance, please.
So I can. So the 3rd edition was more explicit about organisational information requirements and asset information requirements. And Emma Hooper is busy drafting away to cover the exchange information requirements, which will be detailed in the 4th edition. So look out for the 4th edition, and hopefully we will satisfy the level of information that's needed against that particular subject area.
Thank you. Is it possible to put you on the spot of when we think the 4th edition is coming out, or did I miss that earlier, Solly?
No. It's possible. I always say this with my fingers crossed. So we aim every edition, and I think we've hit it within 24 hours. We aim to get a new edition out by the end of the 1st month of a quarter. So we are working towards release by the end of April. I would say that the caveat around that is just against how well we all are to support the programme. Yeah, we have as I sit here today, we have all of our editing meetings arranged to meet that target date.
Okay, thank you very much, Sarah. The next one is probably less of a question for you, but it still sort of throws in your direction. Is somebody's asking to get involved with the BIM for Housing group. So I presume that from the contact details we've got on the webinar, we can put them in touch with you, Sarah.
Well, so just correct me if I'm wrong, Pam, but the group that's working on the project with the BIM Alliance is Housing Association.
Oh, sorry. Yes, the question is BIM for Housing. Right. Apologies, I'm misreading the question. Yes, we can sort that out between myself and Nigel and the rest of the leadership team there. Okay. Yep. And similarly, we've had a question about somebody wanting to understand more about the BIM for Security and Emergency Services group. Again, between myself and the rest of the leadership team with Pam and Andy, we will sort out those details for that person as well. Next one up for Andy to wake him up from his lounge. So we've had a question in as to asking why the RIBA weren't part of the affiliates group. Slightly contentious, but I thought we better let it be answered.
Yeah, no, that's probably good timing to answer that actually, or ask that, because we've, as of yesterday, we've got a meeting set up this Friday. Casey and Dan will be joining me on that to hopefully hook RIBA into the affiliates program, but it's actually driven by the need to, so some of you on the call will have noticed there was an update to the RIBA Planner Works this year, at the start of this year, and quite honestly there was some terminology and language used in that was out of date and actually incorrect in regards to BIM, so we're looking to hopefully write that and at the same time bring them along in the affiliates program, because that's absolutely why that affiliates program exists, for that exact reason, actually, to make sure, you know, aligned messaging and the correct information is shared with their members. So that hopefully will come to a head fairly soon.
Okay, that's great. Thanks very much, Andy. Similarly, I see Trish has now actually pointed out that she is here and that she is being involved with the group on product data. So that's great to hear. Thank you very much for that update. We've been asked if the presentations will be made available. Yes, and the session has been recorded and will at some point go up onto the UK BIM Alliance YouTube channel. Final question then for the afternoon. Back to you, Sarah. We've got, who can we contact to ask for translation permission on the UK BIM framework guidance?
We have had, so the guidance has been translated, I think it was maybe into Turkish, and we have received a number of requests for translation. I think please do ask us for translation, because the way we've approached it is that the English version has been provided with the translation that follows. And so we just ask to see the translation so that we can point out areas that may not be relevant, because the UK guidance contains guidance around the national annex. So let us know if you want to, through the contact us details on the UK BIM Framework website and the UK BIM Alliance website. Let us know if you want to translate the guidance. We'll work with you to, or we'll come back to you, setting out a few requests, and then we'll ask to see the final guidance before it's released. We are actually looking at just updating the UK BIM Framework website to support translation better, because we're very mindful that we can say yes, go ahead and release a translation, but then there are still going to be these updates to the guidance. We want to make sure that we can alert you about an update that's taken place that you would then need to accommodate within the translation.
That's great. Thank you very much for that, Sarah. Right, well, we have no more questions this afternoon, so we're over to our last couple of slides. So it might have been a common theme this afternoon, but it is an important one. The only people that are going to solve all the conundrums, whether it is IFC or BIM or procuring for value or whatever, are people within the industry. Nobody's going to come over the hill and solve it all for us, or if they do, it might be in a way that we didn't want. So this is, again, the call to arms. We need everybody to be involved to make sure, in the way that similarly the way the guidance has been produced, that it is a team effort and a collaborative effort, that we get the answers that we want as for the industry that we want to see. So there are 5 ways there to get in touch with us, to offer your services, your skills, your knowledge, or whatever it might be. You can either use access via the Slack channel, through Twitter, which has been pretty active this afternoon. We have the website. We also have the newsletter that comes out that you can sign up to. Or if you want to know more, then there is that info@ukbimalliance.org website, email address, sorry. Thank you very much yet again to all of our speakers this afternoon, to Nigel, to Anne, to Sarah, to Pam, to Andy, and Tom and Casey, and I hope I haven't missed anybody else out. I think we got through it pretty well. Our next forum is on the 30th of June. Who knows what format it might be, but we all know that digital technology can work, so it may well be in that form. Otherwise, right, going back to Anne's first slides, please make sure that you all keep safe and keep innovating to help the industry to move forward. Thank you very much.